So I moved into my house last October, and immediately after moving in, I did install a home charger for my electric vehicle. And I have a whole video breaking down what I had to do to get charging into my garage because I live in a 120-year-old house. But today we're going to be walking through the home charging costs I've had since moving into my home. So we're going to go kind of month by month. I'll show you my electricity bill, my costs, and just break everything down. So if we just look at my utility bill just at face value here, all utility bills and most utilities have some sort of connection fee. So whether or not you're using electricity or not, this is a flat fee that you're going to have to pay per month. That's why if you see people go solar or not use a lot of energy for some reason, they still have at least some sort of electricity bill. And then on top of that, you may see this split up a few different ways. In my area, they split it up into a distribution charge and a generation charge. So that distribution charge is basically paying for the utility to get the energy from where it's being generated to your house, and the generation is paying for that original generation. And these costs do vary month to month on a per kilowatt hour rate, but this is at least how mine is split up. So if we're looking at my most recent bill here, you can see that I used a total of 2,108 kilowatt hours, and you can see that distribution charge and generation and transmission charge are split up there. So I have to pay the per kilowatt hour rate on distribution at a little over 2 cents, and that generation and transmission charge is a little over 9 cents. And then on top of that, we do have a kilowatt hour tax. I believe this is an Ohio thing, so we do have an additional rate on top of that. But basically, those three amounts will add together to get our per kilowatt hour rate that we're going to use to break down my electricity costs for charging my car. And I did mention I moved in October, but we weren't fully moved in until the full month of December. So this is actually the first month I'm going to start with. I think this is just fair because this was the first full month that we are completely charging the car at home. If we look at December of 2022, 69% of our total charging was done at home. So we did do some traveling around the holiday season, destination charging, supercharging, just out and about charging because of the traveling we're doing. But even that being said, 69% was done at home. And that added up to 740 kilowatt hours worth of charging, which cost about $75.50. That amount accounted for about 30% of our home's electricity usage for the month of December. As we go through here, you'll see that this was one of our bigger months, likely due to all that travel. We were getting home with a relatively low battery if we were out traveling and going long distance. We'd come home with 10% instead of like 60% from the normal daily commute. Moving into January, this month we actually charged completely at home. 100% of our vehicle's charging was done at home. We charged 499 kilowatt hours. This cost about $58.11. In this month, just because we weren't driving as much, this accounted for only 16% of our electricity bill, which is pretty cool. Moving into February, 86% of our charging was done at home. We charged 481 kilowatt hours, which accounted for about $55.79. And because we weren't charging as much, this only accounted for about 18% of our bill. Now looking at March 2023, this was our second biggest month. We did 99% of our charging at home. I think we stopped maybe once at a public charger somewhere to test it out and charge a little bit, but most of our charging was done at home. We charged 711 kilowatt hours, so that makes it our second biggest month, and that cost us about $87.24, and that counted for a quarter of our electricity bill that month. Looking at April, 87% of our charging was done at home. We charged 614 kilowatt hours, and that cost us $75.31. Again, that accounted for a quarter of our electricity bill. Looking at May 2023, 96% of our charging was done at home. We did stop and supercharge one time, but the rest was done at home. We charged 545 kilowatt hours at home, and that accounted for 32% of our bill. Both June and July were both 100% at-home charging. So if you want to get a slice of just charging completely at home and what that costs, these are the 2 months to look at. So in June, we charged 467 kilowatt hours at home. This cost us $55.97. July was 526 kilowatt hours, and that cost us $65.37. So June was about 30% of our bill. July was about 27% of our bill. And then most recently in August, we did 90% of our charging at home. We did take a couple trips and did some other out and about charging. So 90% was at home though. and we charge 451 kilowatt hours. That cost us about $55.48. And that accounted for 24% of our bill. So looking at some averages now, 90% of our charging was done at home. If you take the kilowatt hours charged at home divided by our total kilowatt hours charged, 90% of that energy was collected at home. And this is consistent with what I had heard prior to actually owning an EV. People always said 90% at home, 90% at home. We don't travel a ton, but we do take trips every once in a while, and that is holding true here. So we're right at 90% of our charging being done at home. An average month for us was 559 kilowatt hours, and this cost us $66.23. And on average, that accounted for 24% of our electricity bill. Again, this is pretty consistent with what I hear from other EV owners. After you get an EV, you can expect your bill to go up 20 to 30%. So we're right in that 24% range if you are thinking about what this electricity cost will be. And I think the biggest influence here is actually your per kilowatt hour rate, which I neglected to mention at the beginning there. So our electricity rate is anywhere from 10 cents to 13 cents per kilowatt hour, kind of depending on the month. It has gone up a little bit in recent months, but it's stayed in that 10 to 13 range. And this is really going to be the biggest influence on what home charging is going to cost. So I'd encourage you, if you're looking at getting an EV, looking to see what your electricity costs will be after adding one to your home, see what your current electricity bill is. You can do some math and figure out how many kilowatt hours you think you're going to use on a typical commute, a typical week, and kind of do the math there and calculate basically your per kilowatt hour rate and multiply it by roughly how many kilowatt hours you'll use. As far as our driving habits, we actually are down to one car right now. Our Tesla is our only vehicle, and my wife primarily uses this to commute to work. So doing some quick math, she uses just from her commute about 420 kilowatt hours a month just from commuting. So that alone is definitely bringing up the total amount of kilowatt hours used. And this is a half-hour commute one way. So she's spending an hour basically every day driving, and this costing us, less than $70 a month is honestly not bad with how far she has to commute, how many miles we're putting on the car. That amount really isn't too bad compared to what we might be spending in a gas vehicle. Granted, there are some very efficient hybrids that can probably get close on cost, but just the convenience of the EV is definitely a big bonus for us. So those are my numbers, my home charging costs. As always, I want to hear from other EV owners or potential EV owners. If you own an EV right now, I'd love to hear about your home charging costs. We can get some more data points down in the comments there. And if you are looking at an EV, is this what you expected? Is this more or less than you expected? Be curious to hear your thoughts as well. So that is all for this week. I appreciate the time, and I will talk to you in the next video.